We have got a special guest today. Gary Harding of Isles Talk and of the New York Islanders Booster Club joins us today. We're going to talk trade deadline, four nations, injury updates, and more. All that coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Thursday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you get new episodes as soon as they drop. I'm Gil Martin. I've been covering the New York Islanders for almost 2 decades now, and I wrote the book Ice Wars on the history of the Islanders' rivalry with the New York Rangers. And today we have a special guest. It is my pleasure to welcome to the show the co-host of the Isles Talk podcast and member very involved with the Islanders Booster Club, Gary Harding. You may have seen him on TV during Islanders games, during commercials. Gary, great to have you here.
Gil, it's always a pleasure to be on your show, and thanks for the nice comments. But again, remember, as far as the Booster Club is concerned, I am basically the flunky of the president, which unfortunately I have to live with. So it works out well.
I did not know that was an official title, but that's a good thing.
It certainly is.
All right. Well, let's start off with some injury news. The Islanders practiced on Wednesday, and Noah Dobson out there on the ice before practice, but did not actually practice with the team. So he at least seems to be taking those first steps toward coming back. Ryan Pollock was in a non-contact jersey for the second day in a row, and Marcus Hogberg skating a little bit with goalie coach Piero Greco, but no timeline for him to rejoin practice as of yet. So the walking wounded are getting there, but it's still going to be some time before everybody's ready.
Yeah, it's definitely still a nice road to get us back to 100%. I'm happy, or at least a little thrilled about the fact that that Noah is skating. When you think that somebody actually says they're just on their own skating, you basically set the clock between 14 and 21 days at that point. So figure maybe the 1st of March could be the earliest. It still could be longer, but at least that's a good sign. We know that Scotty Mayfield is practicing. He's back. There should be no problems with him. If Pulak has got that jersey on, that orange jersey, I think that's the non-contact, then you figure, it could be once he gets rid of that, you're talking a week. So that's going to be very crucial come a couple of weeks in the second week of March when we have that West Coast road trip, which is usually a killer trip when they go to California. So that's going to be very critical. And you've got obviously 2 very winnable games and one game that could be the toughest one in LA. But if they can come out like they did last year and come out with either all or most of the points, it's going to be a very critical test.
Yeah, no question about that. And I can't wait to actually get back to Islanders hockey. It's I feel like I'm going through withdrawal a little bit over the last week, as much as I have enjoyed Four Nations. Talk to me about the backup goalie situation right now, because, with this update, it looks like Marcus Hogberg will not be ready Sunday to be the backup. Are you comfortable at this point giving all of the work to Ilya Sorokin? Do you think Jakub Skarek is ready to start another game? And how should Patrick Waugh and Lou Lamoriello handle this backup goalie situation?
I really think at this point you've got to let Ilya run. The numbers may not necessarily show it, but you can see a major difference in Ilya between last year and this year. He is definitely covering his angles better. He's got more flexibility. He's made some incredible saves. I would say and I'm basically guesstimating, but I would say a good 30% of the goals he's given up this year are goals that really shouldn't have been his fault. They're probably things that, nobody would have stopped, but you got to let him run as much as you can, because there's going to be some very critical games coming up in the next 10 days, especially, starting with the Rangers and that. So you got very important matchups, and, you just ride him as much as you can. We're hoping, again, put that same clock that we had on Dobson on Hogberg, and you may see him by the beginning of March, and we'll just keep our fingers crossed that it happens.
Yeah. I mean, if it's longer than that, do you recommend getting another backup, even if it's just somebody to hold down the fort for a few weeks? Or do you give another start or two to Skarek and just let the chips fall where they may?
Well, if it's, they'll be at the deadline, I believe, when they're on the West Coast. So that's a possibility. Again, you got Anaheim, you got San Jose, decent teams, but obviously not in the upper echelon. You could put them in then. Do they make again, the whole thing depends on how they come out of this break. If they come out of this break strong, they win against Dallas, they win against the Rangers, you're putting pressure on the Detroits and Ottawas and all them to get to that number 2 spot, in the wild card. Then it makes your decision making easier or harder. So right now it's up in the air. You're juggling balls at this point. But after those first 2 or 3 games, I think you're going to have an idea what Lou's going to have to do.
The defense pairings at practice today, I think, are a little telling as far as what Patrick Roy will start with. And we know he juggles his defense pairings, his line combinations fairly frequently. But it was Alexander Romanov and Tony DeAngelo, Scott Perunovich and Ryan Polak, Adam Pelech and Scott Mayfield, and then Chalowski and Boqvist were the extra duo, the 4th pair. Your thoughts on those pairings?
I really, it's funny when the deal for Tony came, as typical most Islander fans did, I just went, oh my God, the stories, you heard some of the rumors, and you wonder truthfully what was going to happen, but to be a pleasant surprise is an understatement. And I think he'll fit well with Romy. I like the way Romy played the last 4 or 5 games. Very happy with his physicality, and he's got that hankering of coming in and putting in the pinch when it needs to, and it's worked. Pelech and Mayfield, I think, will be a decent stopgap at this point for your top lines. Mayfield has had some issues. Obviously, we all know that. It's documented. But I still think when the chips are down, you need size as your shutdown unit. And if you don't have Ryan Pulock there, being able to play, then Scotty Mayfield at 6'5", 220 is a definite good option. And again, Perunovich is another great story. The 3 deals that 3 defensemen in a week for Lou making the moves have been nice. You can't be disappointed in what's happened. No. They've played well. The last 2 games before the break, you're playing the 1st and the 3rd best team in the NHL. And against Winnipeg, you did well, and against Minnesota, it just collapsed on them. But other than that, I think the defensive play of this team has been miraculous. It's been good, and especially it shows on the penalty kill where we're not in last anymore. So I think we're fine. Again, you're treading water, but it's very important water to tread through right now.
No doubt about that. Your thoughts on Anthony Duclair? It's obvious to me he doesn't look like he's 100% right now. He's kind of trying to tough things out. But how does that affect his usage and what you think they should do as far as him going forward is concerned?
Well, he's a professional. 9 years in the league. Yes, he's been with over 10 years in the league, I think, but he's been with a whole bunch of teams. So he's a proven professional. Yes. Do I think he's 100%? No. He's a little under that. But you could see the efforts there. you could see the passions there. And again, he's a Patrick Waugh disciple, so you know he's going to do everything that Patrick tells him to do. You know, we've seen in the past when guys have been injured and all of a sudden when they get a break, things come out of things come out of nowhere. So as an Islander fan, that's what you want. You want to see the guy that's been a 30-goal scorer in the NHL, and he could be there. You know, obviously we wanted him with Barzy and Horvat. You know, that was the dream line. That unfortunately didn't happen because of everything that's happened to the team. But again, as a disciple of Patrick and the way we've seen him beat us on many occasions when he's wore one of those 8 different other uniforms he's had, he's capable of it. And you just got to hope that, you know, the break did him a big favor. And, you know, you got to ride these vets, you know, as long as you can.
Where would you put him in the lineup at this point when play resumes?
Well, I mean, the second, if you want to call it line 2 with Palms, Nelson, and Sipakov have been really gotten their chemistry back, and they look good. I mean, right now, I would leave him with Bo, you know, up at the top. I would leave him there and Andrews for now. You know, I really think the lines that they have set up have worked out well. They've been interchanging the fourth a little bit. We all know that. Right. But the third line's been strong. Homer's been a great help this year. I mean, he is. Yeah. You know, Paul and I on Isles Talk have talked about this for years. We kept saying he needs to groom. He needs to groom. He needs to groom. And that was the one that did. And we just said, you know, last year we just said, you know what? He gained a little weight. Maybe this is going to help. And it's worked. And he looks so confident with the puck now. Yep. I mean, that is a blessing. And a lot of people ripped management on that move. And, you know, it's been a very, very nice blessing for him. And he's fit well with Pageau and Casey. So really, I think the lines as they are should really stay and, you know, and see what happens with anybody coming back.
All right. Well, sounds good. All right. We've got a lot more to get to on today's show. Brock Nelson, Team USA, 4 nations. We're going to talk about that. Plus, what should happen at the trade deadline. And even though Gary's here, we have our Islanders birthday of the day. A player who was both a player, assistant coach, head coach, and who assisted on what may be the most famous goal in Islanders history. Let's see if you can guess who that is. We've got all that and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1-ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better-for-you unsaturated fats to keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no-shells variety. It's the perfect grab-and-go snack for busy days. Whether I'm snacking at my desk, on a road trip, or just need a quick protein boost, they're always my go-to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. So, get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. That's wonderfulpistachios.com. We are back with Gary Harding of Isles Talk and the Islanders Booster Club. Great to have you back, Gary. Always a pleasure to talk a little Islanders hockey with you. And I got to be honest, I have been very pleasantly surprised by what we've seen at Four Nations tournament. The competition, the intensity, the level of play compared to an all-star game, it's like night and day, quite honestly.
Yeah, for sure.
Your thoughts on the tournament so far on Team USA and Brock Nelson?
Yeah. You know, we haven't had, you know, NHL players in a tournament like this, obviously, since the World Cup of Hockey in 2016. So it's been almost 10 years. And, you know, if you weren't a hockey fan and you tuned into ABC Saturday night at 8 o'clock, by the time 8:15 rolled around, your eyeballs probably popped out of your head. But it was just I thought it was an Islander Ranger game. I thought it was a Flyer Penguin game, because we all know as hockey purists what those rivalries are. And to many of the young fans that really haven't seen much of those kind of competitions, if you're on YouTube, go look up the 1996 World Cup of Hockey and look up. If you saw Brady and Matthew Tkachuk go, in those fights, go check out his dad in the 96 tournament. I mean, Keith Tkachuk was 400 goals. I think he got over 400 goals, if I'm not mistaken.
He was very close.
Yeah, I know he had a couple 50s, but but he could do them up with anybody. And he basically gave the team the lift, got kicked out after 15 seconds of the game, the main game. And, USA, obviously, we all know, came out with the victory. And Saturday reminded me just of that. But every game in this tournament, regardless, has been a very exciting game. I mean, unfortunately, we lost to Sweden on Monday. We were very shorthanded. Sweden's was very shorthanded. I mean, all three goaltenders were sick. I mean, I don't know what bug is going around there, but I'm wondering, and Gil, you should keep tabs on this. Just wonder in the next 7 to 10 days after the season starts back, how many guys are out sick?
Yeah.
Because it's going to go through every team, except for Washington, because I don't think they sent anybody. I think the entire Capital team is home.
Wow.
That's interesting. But, every game's been great. I am so looking forward to tomorrow. I don't think you're going to have the start that you had on Saturday,
no.
But it has been glue to your seat, intense, a lot of digging in the corners. There's been a lot of hitting. Again, relatively clean. Mm-hmm. I will say that because you got the best players in the world. You don't have guys that are looking with chips on their shoulder. They're playing the game the way it was meant to be. Skating, physicality, but clean. And that's what you want. You don't want to see anybody get hurt. You don't want to see any issues but you want the best of the best. And, when, McDavid and Crosby and McKinnon go out on the ice and you got Matthew Tkachuk and all the other Tkachuks and everybody that's on the Team USA, I just can't wait. I'm chomping at the bit.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. How about Brock Nelson? Your thoughts on how he's done? I mean, a bottom six role, again, because of injuries and illnesses, the lines have kind of juggled a little bit, but he's been either a fourth liner or a third liner, depending on the game. Your thoughts on how he's handled that role and how he's represented both the Islanders and Team USA?
Well, in typical Brock fashion, he does whatever he needs to do. But I think the interesting sign that you got that I don't know how many people really paid attention to this. You had Matthew Tkachuk down. You had Austin Matthews down. So you had to have guys wear A's. Who did they give an A to? Brock Nelson.
Yeah.
So that tells you, number one, what he means in the room and what his reputation is. Granted, he's not playing 22 minutes that your top line is going to play. I think he played in the Sweden game. I think he played 16 or 17. So obviously they really evened it out. But, he was on your top penalty killing line. And, he didn't need to have the pressure, of being, the offensive guy. He was playing with Larkin. He was playing with Kyle Connor, guys that we know are good goal scorers. And he just plays his typical two-way game. So he's done exactly what I expected him to be. Obviously, we know he wasn't going to be a number one line player, but he contributes. He's not going to be seen on the score sheet, but he's out there and he's doing the job.
Yeah. Any predictions for Thursday night's game between Team USA and Team Canada for all the marbles?
Bet on overtime. Bet on overtime.
Yeah.
And again, it's regular sudden death overtime, so it's 5-on-5. Go as long as we can. Wouldn't you want a game that goes on until 2 a.m?
Oh, that would be exciting. Yeah,
it's too bad it's not on ABC because then the network would be really ticked off. But
yes, they would be.
But I mean, there's nothing more exciting than getting down to the third period, 3 minutes left, and it's a tie score, and you see how everybody's trying to push that envelope just a notch more.
Yeah.
And that's when hockey to me becomes the best sport. And that's how I try to explain it to non-hockey fans. I said, watch the excitement, watch the intensity, watch the countenance, watch their facial expressions and their body language. That's when you know that guys are into it. And there's nothing like it.
There is nothing more exciting in sports, I think, than overtime playoff sudden death hockey. And if it's a game 7, it's even, more intense. But I mean, think about like the Easter epic. I mean, it just games like that where every trip up the ice could be the last one of the season, or your ticket to the next round of the playoffs. It's
or 7-11 in overtime on game 6.
There you go. So yes, the most famous goal in Islanders history. All right, we have got more to get to on today's show. The trade deadline rapidly approaching. We're going to talk to Gary about what may happen and what maybe should happen at the trade deadline. Plus, we'll have our Islanders birthday of the day. All that and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Thank you for making Locked On Islanders your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Become a fantasy hockey expert and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from our hosts, Steele and Flip. Find the Locked On Fantasy Hockey podcast on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Gary, trade deadline, March 7th. We're getting so close. Lou Lamoriello's famous statement is, if you have time, use it. The clock is ticking. Obviously, what this team does in the next few games is going to play a big role in what his decision is. But as of right now, what do you think this team should do at the trade deadline?
Wow, that's hard. It really is. We've said this in past years, especially on Isles Talk and other things. It's hard to predict what they're going to say, but what they're going to do. But right now, as we stand, you're 4 points out of a playoff spot. That's 2 games. And especially with the games that you're playing within your division, it becomes important. You only have one, obviously, against Philadelphia. I believe you have one more against Columbus. You got 3 against the Rangers coming up. So at this point, you're not selling at this point. And Islander fans, of course, have been very frustrated over the past few years because of Lou Lamoriello's inability, whether it's inability or didn't want to make a move that was fitting for him. Because if anybody knows Lou Lamoriello, and you and I have been following this man for probably over 40 years,
yeah,
he is not going to make a move just for the sake of making a move. If it's right, if he feels it in his gut, it'll happen. Are they going to talk to Brock Nelson and make a deal? You don't know that. And again, Lou never turns a card. If somebody says to you on X or on a podcast or on somewhere else that Lou Lamoriello is talking about this, they know nothing.
And or they heard it from the other person who he's talking to.
Exactly.
It could be leaked
somebody
by
saying that
else.
Lou's talking, but he's not talking.
Right.
Believe me, nobody knows. Nobody will know. Not even in that office, nobody will know. Terry Guider, who works for the GM since the Mike Milbury days, he knows nothing.
Right.
So, but again, as you said, and I stated earlier in the show, I think the whole thing depends on the first 3 games coming out of the break. If they get, I would say, if they get less than 3 points or less in those first 3 games, then I would start maybe pushing toward the seller side. But that's me. That's not Lou Lamoriello. So, but if they're getting 5, if they get 5 out of 6, oh yeah, I'm looking to make a deal. I'm looking to make something to improve. They need to get another. They need to get another, if they can, a top 6 forward. The thing that scares me a little bit, and my partner Paul Kreischer, he's a draft expert and he goes through all this stuff. Really, when you're looking at the draft this coming season, anything from 15 to 50 are the same. So basically, if you got a first round pick and you're picking 19, 20, 21, it's like a second. So it's not going to matter much. It's not going to get you much. Right. So that's the big 64,000. Let's rephrase that for now. $64 million question is what will he do? How can he get away? You've got LTIR right now with Barzy, so that can help you a little bit. You might have a little bit with Pulak for the time being, and stuff, and Varley. So you do have room. Yeah. But it's how you can fit that room. Once that's done, once the draft, the trade deadline's done, then you can start working with things. And if guys come back, they come back. Right. So, it's almost Russian roulette, if you will, So, like I said, my guess is see what happens the first 3 games. 5 out of 6, you're buying. 3 or less, you lean to sell.
You don't want to lose Brock Nelson or Kyle Palmieri and get nothing in return. You don't want a repeat of the John Tavares situation from however many years ago. What would you offer those 2 players as in the way of an extension, or are they better off trading them even if they get back guys who could help them try to make the playoffs right now?
Yeah, and that's where the sticky wicket lies. Nelson, you're talking 850 games in an Islander uniform, a dozen years, a very, very important cog in the organization. Everybody's saying he's going to either Winnipeg or Minnesota because of the distance between his home in Warren to there. I got it. It's the sexy move. It's the right move. Both of those teams are looking to build on their positioning. If you say, just for sake of argument, I got to put a gun to my head and say you got to trade Brock Nelson in one of these 2 teams. I want a top 6 player back. Because of the draft situation, maybe a 1 in 26, but I definitely want at least the top 6 back. Mm-hmm. Maybe a change of scenery for somebody on Minnesota or Winnipeg that's not doing as good as they should might be an answer. But again, I'm on the fence with trading him. Palmieri, as much as my friends in Section 316 want him traded for a broken box of pucks, that's a hard one too. Actually, to me, a destination where I think he might, if you were going to trade him, where he might fit is go back across the border and over to Jersey. Yeah. I think he would fit well on the Devils side. But again, same situation. I want something back in return. Mm-hmm. I want something good. And Fitzgerald and Lou are very close. Yes. So neither one's going to get fleeced, but something, I think if you're going to move one of those 2 players, you've got to definitely get something back in value to get rid of them.
It's going to be interesting. No question about that. And we will cover it every step of the way. It's going to be a fascinating next few weeks for the Islanders, their fans, the players, and we'll see how Lou Lamoriello handles the trade deadline. Time now for our Islanders birthday of the day. And, well, we are a couple of days early on this, but Lorne Henning will turn 73 on Saturday. A guy who was with the Islanders from the very beginning, their second ever draft pick back in 1972, was with the team as a player through the 80-81 season, was an assistant coach, a head coach briefly for the Islanders. He's pretty much done everything except sell programs for this team over the course of his career.
I'll bet you he did it. I'll bet he did it once.
He might have. He might have. And, of course, he assisted on Bobby Nystrom's overtime game winner in 1980. That gave the Islanders their first Stanley Cup. Just wanted to ask you your memories and your thoughts about the legacy of Lorne Henning.
Yeah. One of the first bald players on the Islanders. Again, Butchie helped that too. But, Yeah, a very dependable player. Again, for most of the young people in your audience, Gil, that didn't really get to see Lauren Henning, a good penalty killer, a good two-way player, got your occasional goal, and maybe get 8 or 9 goals a year or whatever. You weren't expecting a lot offensively from him, but you knew you can depend on him. Again, a typical Torrey/Arbor kind of player.
Yeah.
You knew what you got with him. It never changed. It never moved that high up or down, but it was consistent all the time. And of course, he then got involved on the coaching side, and then went into the scouting side and that. And it was funny. I can just give you a quick story. Years ago, I think it was John Tavares. It was John Tavares' first season with the Islanders. My wife and I took a trip to Vancouver to see the Islanders play. And we were walking around downtown, and we get towards the arena, and who's the first person we see? Lauren Henning. It was just like, I forgot he was working for the Canucks at the time, but we said hello and talked about the Booster Club and all this stuff, and he was very, very appreciative of it. And he said, nothing will ever beat the time I spent, with the Islanders and playing and coaching in those cup days. And like I said, he was the consummate player. I kind of could almost put him to a Casey Zizekas without the hitting.
Yeah.
He wasn't much of a hitter, but he was that type of person. He was where he had to be. He did all the right things. And of course, he gave the pass to John Tonelli, and it was onside. And of course, to Bobby, and we all know what happened after that. So again, happy birthday, Lauren. Many, many more. And thank you for all the memories you gave to Long Island fans, especially the ones of our collective ages.
All right, Gary, I want to thank you so much for being here. Why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find your podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Okay, well, usually on Wednesday nights, we are myself, Paul Kreischer, who runs the site now in the absence of me, and another guy, Joe Panettiere. We do Isles Talk on Wednesday nights, live on YouTube at 8 p.m. Eastern. We did not do it. We're taping this actually when our show normally might have been on, but Paul had things he had to do, so we couldn't do it tonight. But we do get some guests time to time. Gil, we had the pleasure of having him on one night, and it was one of our better shows that we ever did, I must tell you. So check some mail, Gil. Yeah, so definitely check us out. We do a lot of water cooler talk, which is great. So, you get in the chat room and talk with us, and we respond right away to things. And one thing I think, and Gil does such a great job on his, and what we feel we have to do in ours is we want to talk to people just like we're seeing in a bar, but we're not going to be argumentative. You've got your opinion. We may not necessarily be 100% for it, but we'll let you talk about it. And that's the great avenue of, I think, of our podcast. But then again, Wednesday nights, 8 o'clock, YouTube, X, or Facebook Live. Check out our stuff. I am on Isles at Met 63, Isles Met 63, right? I forget. Definitely check us out.
All right, Gary, thank you so much. We'll definitely have you on again at some point, and always great to talk a little Islanders hockey with you.
Thank you, Gil, very much again for having me on, and hopefully we catch you at UBS before the season ends.
Yeah, hope so. We're working on that. We are working
on that.
All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for making Locked On Islanders your first listen today. Every day as we are back tomorrow, we actually will have games to preview. We'll preview this weekend's games as Islanders hockey returns. So very much looking forward to that. If you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, email us at lockedonislanders@gmail.com. If you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. You could follow the show on X at Locked On Isles, and you could follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR vs NYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all year long, and I'm live tweeting during nearly every Islanders home and road game. So join me for some instant insight and analysis, and it's great to talk Islanders hockey with you, game time or anytime. Have a great day, everybody. Stay safe, and of course, let's go Islanders. Islanders.